The plasma bolt seared through the air just inches from Marcus Chen's helmet, leaving a trail of superheated atmosphere that made his ears ring. He pressed himself against the twisted wreckage of what had once been a Terran dropship. His medical kit clutched tightly against his chest. The sounds of battle raged around him on the desolate moon of Kepler 442c, where humanity had made its desperate last stand against the Zephyrian collective. Marcus wasn't a soldier. He was a medic, trained to save lives rather than take them. But when the evacuation ships had been destroyed in orbit, every human on the surface became a combatant by necessity. The Zephyrians showed no mercy to non-combatants. They were apex predators from a world where only the strongest survived, and they viewed humans as nothing more than soft, weak prey. The screaming started again from somewhere beyond the ridge, human voices calling for help. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, steadying his breathing. He had 3 doses of combat stim left in his kit, enough to keep 3 critically wounded soldiers fighting long enough to reach the evacuation point, if there even was an evacuation point anymore. He sprinted across the scarred landscape, dodging between the crystalline formations that jutted from the moon's surface like broken teeth. The gravity here was lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like he was running through a dream. Behind him, the orange glow of burning atmospheric processors painted the sky in hellish hues. The wounded soldier was trapped beneath a piece of debris, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood seeped through his combat armor, and his face was pale with shock. Marcus dropped to his knees beside him, already reaching for his medical scanner. "Doc, thank God," the soldier gasped. "I thought I was done for." "Not on my watch, Private Rodriguez," Marcus replied, injecting the first dose of combat stim directly into the man's bloodstream. The drug would mask the pain and boost his adrenaline, giving him maybe an hour of fighting capability before his body crashed. "Can you move?" Rodriguez tested his limbs carefully. The stim was already working, color returning to his cheeks. "Yeah, I think so. But Doc, there's something you need to know. We found one of them, a Zephyrian. It's wounded, maybe dying." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Where?" "About 50 meters northeast in that crater. Johnson wanted to finish it off, but Captain Morrison said to leave it. Said we weren't executioners." Rodriguez struggled to his feet, using his rifle as a makeshift crutch. "But the thing is, Doc, it's just lying there. Not fighting, not trying to escape, just waiting." The medic's training warred with his common sense. Zephyrians were 7-foot-tall killing machines with chitinous exoskeletons that could deflect most small arms fire, and claws that could slice through steel. They had wiped out 3 human colonies before this war had even begun, showing no quarter to civilians, children, or medical personnel. But something in Rodriguez's voice made him hesitate. "Rodriguez, get back to the rally point. Tell Morrison I'm checking something out." "Doc, you can't be serious. That thing will tear you apart the moment you get close." Marcus was already moving, his medical instincts overriding his fear. He had sworn an oath to preserve life, and that oath didn't specify which species deserved saving, even if it meant his death. The crater was larger than he had expected, carved into the moon's surface by some ancient impact. At the bottom, partially hidden behind a fallen boulder, lay the Zephyrian. Marcus had never seen one up close before. Even wounded, it was magnificent in a terrifying way. Its exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, and its forearms ended in claws that could easily disembowel a human. But its breathing was labored, and a pool of dark blue blood had formed beneath its torso. Marcus slid down into the crater, his boots scraping against the loose rock. The Zephyrian's compound eyes tracked his movement, but it made no attempt to attack. Up close, he could see the wound. A plasma rifle had burned through its exoskeleton just below what might have been its heart. The injury was fatal without immediate medical intervention. The creature spoke, its voice a series of clicks and harmonics that somehow conveyed meaning despite the language barrier. Marcus didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was asking why he had come. "I'm a medic," Marcus said quietly, kneeling just out of reach of those deadly claws. "I help people who are hurt." The Zephyrian's mandibles clicked together in what might have been surprise. It spoke again, longer this time, and Marcus caught what sounded like a question in its alien voice. Marcus looked at his medical kit. 2 doses of combat stim remained, enough to save 2 more human lives. The evacuation point was still hours away, and there would be more wounded before this was over. Every rational part of his mind screamed that he was about to make a fatal mistake. But as he looked into those alien compound eyes, he saw something he hadn't expected. Pain, yes, but also curiosity. This creature was studying him with the same intensity that he was studying it. For the first time since the war began, Marcus was face to face with a Zephyrian that wasn't trying to kill him. "This is going to hurt," he said, pulling out one of the remaining stim doses. The Zephyrian's eyes widened as it saw the medical injector, but it didn't resist as Marcus approached. Its flesh was warm beneath the exoskeleton, and he could feel the rapid flutter of multiple hearts as he found a suitable injection site. The combat stim wouldn't heal the creature's wounds, but it would give its natural regeneration abilities a boost and mask the pain. It might buy the Zephyrian a few more hours of life. As the drug took effect, the creature's breathing steadied and some of the tension left its posture. What happened next would haunt Marcus for the rest of his life. The Zephyrian reached into a pouch on its equipment harness and withdrew something small and crystalline. With careful, deliberate movements, it placed the object in Marcus's hand. The crystal was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with an inner light. The creature spoke one final time, its voice softer now, almost gentle. Then it closed its eyes and settled back against the crater wall, as if finally allowing itself to rest. Marcus climbed out of the crater with the crystal clutched in his hand, not understanding what had just happened, but knowing that something fundamental had changed. In the distance, he could hear the roar of engines. The evacuation ships had arrived. The evacuation ship's medical bay hummed with activity as Marcus worked to stabilize the wounded. The crystal the Zephyrian had given him sat in his pocket, its warmth a constant reminder of the encounter in the crater. He had told no one about what happened, not even Captain Morrison. How could he explain that he had used precious medical supplies on an enemy combatant? 3 days into their journey back to Earth, everything changed. Marcus was running routine medical checks when Private Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, collapsed during physical therapy. The young soldier had taken shrapnel to his spine during the evacuation, and the ship's limited medical facilities couldn't repair the damage. Chen was paralyzed from the waist down, facing a lifetime in a wheelchair if he survived the journey home. As Marcus ran his scanner over Chen's damaged spine, the crystal in his pocket began to pulse with increased intensity. At first he thought it was his imagination, but the warmth was becoming impossible to ignore. When he finally pulled the crystal from his pocket, it was glowing with soft blue light that seemed to respond to Chen's proximity. "Doc, what is that thing?" Chen asked, his eyes wide with wonder. Marcus hesitated. "Something I picked up on Kepler 442c. It wasn't technically a lie, but it felt like one. I'm not sure what it does." The crystal's pulsing grew stronger as Marcus held it closer to Chen's injured spine. On impulse, he pressed it gently against the man's back. The effect was immediate and shocking. Chen's legs jerked as sensation returned, and the scanner showed neural pathways regenerating at an impossible rate. Within minutes, Chen could move his toes. Within an hour, he was walking. By the end of the day, it was as if the injury had never happened. Word spread quickly through the ship. A miracle cure, some called it. Divine intervention, said others. But Marcus knew the truth was far more complex and troubling. He retreated to his quarters and pulled up everything the military databases had on Zephyrian technology. What he found made his blood run cold. The crystal wasn't just some random artifact. According to intelligence reports, similar crystals were found only in the most sacred Zephyrian burial sites, objects so precious that entire wars had been fought over them. The Zephyrian in the crater had given him a piece of its culture's most treasured technology. But why? Marcus was deep in research when his door chimed. Captain Morrison entered without waiting for permission, her face grim. "Chen told me about his miraculous recovery. He also told me about that crystal you're carrying." There was no point in denying it. Marcus pulled the crystal from his pocket, noting how it had dimmed since healing Chen. "I don't fully understand what it is, Captain." "Where did you get it?" Marcus met her eyes. "From a dying Zephyrian." Morrison's expression didn't change, but her hand moved unconsciously to her sidearm. "Explain." Marcus told her everything from finding the wounded creature to the moment it placed the crystal in his hand. Morrison listened without interrupting, her face growing more troubled with each detail. "You used medical supplies on an enemy combatant," she said when he finished. "I used medical supplies on a dying sentient being. That Dying sentient being species has killed millions of humans. Yes, Marcus said quietly, and we've killed millions of them. But this one didn't try to hurt me. It gave me something precious instead. Morrison stared at the crystal for a long moment. Do you have any idea what you've stumbled into, Doctor? Before Marcus could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life. All hands to battle stations. Unknown vessels approaching, classification, Zephyrian. The bridge was chaos when they arrived. Through the main view screen, Marcus could see 3 Zephyrian warships moving in perfect formation. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb the starlight, and weapon signatures bloomed across the tactical display like deadly flowers. They're not attacking, reported the tactical officer, confusion evident in her voice. They're matching our course and speed. Hail them, Morrison ordered. Static filled the bridge for several seconds before a voice emerged. It spoke in heavily accented English, each word carefully pronounced. Human vessel. We wish to speak with the one who carries the light of remembrance. Morrison looked at Marcus. That would be you. Marcus stepped forward, the crystal growing warm in his hand again. This is Marcus Chen. I'm the one you're looking for. Marcus Chen. You showed mercy to Warrior Prime Zethkar in his final moments. You gave precious healing substances to one who should have been your enemy. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Marcus could feel every eye on him as he replied. He was wounded. I'm a doctor. It's what I do. A sound came through the speakers that might have been laughter, though it was unlike any sound Marcus had ever heard. You heal those who cannot repay you. You show kindness to those who have shown you none. This is the way of the ancestor healers. I don't understand. Long ago, before the great burning, before the eternal hunt began, our people knew peace. We had healers who would tend to any wounded creature regardless of clan or species. They carried crystals like the one you now possess, tools that could mend flesh and bone with the touch of compassion. The image on the view screen shifted, showing the interior of the Zephyrian bridge. The creature speaking was smaller than the warriors Marcus had encountered, its exoskeleton marked with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story. I am speaker for the dead Morden. Warrior Prime Zethkar was my bloodkin, my chosen brother. His final transmission told of a soft flesh who showed the ancient kindness. He said you reminded him of the old stories, the legends of those who healed without judgment. Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down on him. What happened to those healers? They died out when the hunt began, when survival became more important than compassion, when we learned that the galaxy was full of those who would exploit kindness as weakness. The speaker's mandibles clicked sadly, but Zethkar believed he had found one who remembered the old ways. A human who carried the spirit of the ancestor healers. What does this mean? It means, Marcus Chen, that everything is about to change. The Zephyrian proposal was unprecedented in the history of interstellar warfare. Speaker for the dead Mordun had requested a formal ceasefire to allow what they called a binding of understanding between Marcus and their eldest healer, one who had studied the ancient ways for over 3 centuries. Captain Morrison had spent 6 hours on subspace communication with Earth Command before receiving authorization to proceed. The meeting would take place on a neutral research station in the Vega system, with both sides bringing minimal escort vessels and no weapons larger than personal sidearms. Marcus found himself in the surreal position of being the most important person in human space, at least temporarily. Intelligence officers briefed him on Zephyrian culture. Xenobiologists explained their physiology, and diplomats coached him on the subtle nuances of first contact protocols. But none of it felt adequate preparation for what lay ahead. The research station was a sterile utilitarian structure designed for scientific collaboration between species. It had been abandoned since the war began, its laboratories and conference rooms gathering dust while the galaxy tore itself apart. Now it would host the most crucial meeting in human history. Marcus waited in Conference Room 7, the crystal resting on the table before him. It had grown dimmer since healing Private Chen, but it still pulsed with soft light as if responding to his emotional state. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the Zephyrian escort ships maintaining a respectful distance from the human vessels. The door hissed open, and Marcus stood as 2 figures entered. The first was Speaker Mordun, whom he recognized from the transmission. The second was clearly ancient, even by Zephyrian standards. Its exoskeleton had taken on a silver-gray patina that spoke of centuries of life, and its movements were deliberate and measured. Complex crystalline patterns had been carved into its shell, creating an intricate map of experiences and honors. "Marcus Chen," Morden said formally, "I present Elder Healer Vashti, keeper of the ancient ways, last of the compassion-bound." The ancient Zephyrian studied Marcus with compound eyes that seemed to see far more than they should. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through crystal caves, haunting and beautiful. "You carry the light of remembrance," Vashti said in accented but precise English. "Show me." Marcus placed the crystal on the table between them. Vashti approached slowly, reverently, and when it spoke again, its voice was filled with wonder. "I had thought them all lost. The last lights were destroyed when the burning ships came to Kethmaran, when the devourer species cleansed our sacred worlds." The Elder Healer's mandibles clicked in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as deep emotion. "Where did Warrior Prime Zethkar find this?" "I don't think he found it," Marcus said quietly. "I think he carried it with him." Vashti's compound eyes focused on Marcus with laser intensity. "Explain." "When I knelt beside him in that crater, he wasn't surprised to see me. He was studying me, like he was looking for something specific, and when I treated his wounds, he didn't resist. It was like he was waiting for me to prove something." "The old stories speak of tests," Vashti said thoughtfully, "challenges that would reveal the true nature of a being's spirit. Zethkar was of the last clutch, those born when the old knowledge was nearly lost. His clutch mother was my student long ago." Morden leaned forward. "You believe he was testing this human?" "I believe he was testing whether the ancient compact could be renewed." Vashti extended one claw toward the crystal, stopping just short of touching it. "The lights of remembrance were created during the first piece, when 12 species bound themselves together in an alliance of mutual aid. Each species contributed something unique. The Veltar gave their knowledge of stellar navigation. The Morgeth shared their mastery of energy manipulation. The humans," Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, "the humans were part of this alliance." "Not your humans," Vashti clarified. "Another branch of your species, one that evolved on a world we called Kalamesh. They were healers, as you are, beings who would tend to any wounded creature without thought of reward or vengeance. They called themselves the Oathbound." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What happened to them?" "The same thing that happened to most of the Alliance," Morden said grimly. "The Devourer species found them, consumed their worlds, their knowledge, their very DNA. We thought the bloodline extinct. But you think Marcus might be descended from them?" Vashti studied Marcus again, those ancient eyes seeming to peer into his very soul. "The light responds to him as it once responded to the Oathbound. More importantly, he behaved as they would have behaved. Compassion without expectation of reward. Healing without judgment of worth." Marcus picked up the crystal, feeling its familiar warmth. "What does this mean for the war?" "It means," Vashti said slowly, "that perhaps the old compact can be renewed. But first, you must understand the full weight of what you carry." The Elder Healer produced a device from its equipment pouch, something that looked like a combination scanner and meditation focus. When activated, it projected a holographic star map that filled the air above the conference table. "This is the galaxy as it was during the first piece," Vashti explained. 12 species, hundreds of worlds, all united in the pursuit of knowledge and mutual prosperity. The Oathbound humans established healing stations throughout Alliance space, places where any being could receive aid regardless of species or allegiance. The map shifted, showing the Alliance at its height. Marcus could see the trade routes connecting different species, the joint research facilities, the shared colonies where multiple races lived in harmony. It lasted for nearly 1,000 years, Morden added, until the Devourers came from beyond the galactic rim. The map changed again, showing the slow but inexorable spread of something dark and terrible across Alliance space. Entire star systems winked out of existence as the unknown enemy advanced. "They consumed everything," Vashti said quietly. "Not just life, but the very essence of what made each species unique. By the time the Alliance realized what they were facing, it was too late to mount an effective defense. The surviving species scattered," Morden continued. "Some, like my people, became nomadic hunters, believing that only strength could protect them from future threats. Others withdrew to hidden worlds or dimensional pockets. A few, like the Oathbound, simply vanished." Marcus stared at the crystal in his hand. And you think humanity might be the descendants of these Oathbound? I think, Vashatai said carefully, that the light of remembrance recognizes something in you that has been sleeping for millennia. The question is whether you are willing to awaken it. What would that mean? It would mean accepting the role of Healer Prime, the highest rank among the Oathbound. It would mean binding yourself to serve any being in need, regardless of the consequences to yourself or your species. Marcus thought of Private Chen, walking again because of the crystal's power. He thought of the countless wounded he had treated during the war, human and alien alike. He thought of his medical oath, sworn so many years ago in a classroom on Earth. And if I accept this role, Vashtai and Mordun exchanged a look that spoke of possibilities neither dared voice aloud. Then perhaps, Vashtai said, the first piece can become the second piece. And perhaps this galaxy can remember what it means to heal instead of merely survive. The ceremony took place in the station's largest laboratory, a space hastily converted into something resembling a sacred grove from ancient Zephyrian tradition. Crystalline formations had been arranged in precise geometric patterns, and the lighting had been adjusted to cast long shadows that danced across the walls like living things. Marcus stood in the center of it all, still struggling to believe what he had agreed to. 3 days of intensive preparation had filled his head with fragments of ancient knowledge, healing techniques that predated human civilization, and the weight of responsibility that came with the title of Healer Prime. Vashatai moved around the perimeter of the chamber, its claws tracing complex symbols in the air while it chanted in a language that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. The light of remembrance, now resting in a crystalline focus device, pulsed in rhythm with the elder healer's words. The binding will change you, Vashatai had warned during their final preparation session. You will gain access to healing knowledge that your species has forgotten, but you will also become something more than human and perhaps something less. The Oathbound were not entirely biological in their final form. The chanting reached a crescendo, and the crystal flared with brilliant light. Marcus felt something surge through him, a sensation like lightning mixed with warm honey. Knowledge flooded his mind. Not just facts and techniques, but an understanding of life itself at its most fundamental level. He could see the biological matrix that connected all living things, the quantum threads that bound consciousness to flesh, the delicate balance that separated life from death. More than that, he could feel every living being on the station, from the smallest microorganism to Vashatai's ancient presence, their pain, their health, their potential for healing. All of it was suddenly as clear to him as his own heartbeat. The transformation lasted only minutes, but when it was over, Marcus knew he would never be the same. The crystal had merged with his nervous system, becoming part of him in a way that transcended mere symbiosis. He was still human, but he was also something new. It is done, Vashtai announced. The compact is renewed. The first Healer Prime in 1,000 years stands before us. Marcus looked at his hands and saw faint traces of crystalline patterns beneath his skin, like veins of light that pulsed with his heartbeat. When he focused, he could sense the health of everyone in the room with perfect clarity. Mordun had an old injury to its left arm that had never properly healed. Vashti carried the accumulated damage of 3 centuries, pain that it bore with stoic acceptance. I can help you, Marcus said, reaching toward Vashti. Both of you. I can see what's wrong. No, Vashatai said firmly. That is not why we have done this. The Healer Prime does not exist to tend to old wounds and ancient hurts. You have a greater purpose. As if summoned by those words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom. All personnel to emergency stations. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple bogies approaching the system. Classification unknown, but they're big. The 3 rushed to the station's command center where displays showed the approaching threat. Ships unlike anything in the databases were emerging from hyperspace at the system's edge. They were vast and organic-looking, their hulls seeming to shift and flow like living tissue. Devourers, Mordun whispered, its voice filled with primal terror. Vashtai's compound eyes reflected the horror on the screen. Impossible. They were destroyed. The Alliance's final fleet eliminated them at the Battle of the Seven Suns. Apparently not all of them, Morrison said grimly. Whatever they are, they're heading straight for us. ETA 14 hours. Marcus studied the approaching ships and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Through his enhanced senses, he could perceive them more clearly than the sensors could. They weren't just ships, they were alive, vast predatory organisms that fed on the life force of entire worlds. "How many beings are on this station?" he asked. "Skeleton crew," Morrison replied. "Maybe 30 humans, plus our 2 Zephyrian guests." "Not enough," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "They're not coming for the station or the ships. They're coming for me." Vashti's mandibles clicked in sudden comprehension. "The renewal of the compact." They can sense it across space. "The Devourers have always been drawn to concentrations of healing energy." "Then we need to evacuate immediately," Morrison said. "No." Marcus moved to the central console, his new awareness expanding to encompass the entire system. "Running won't work. These things can track life energy across vast distances. If they're here, it's because they've already locked onto us." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus closed his eyes and let his consciousness expand further, touching the minds of every human and Zephyrian in the system. Through the crystalline network that now ran through his nervous system, he could feel their fear, their determination, their willingness to fight despite impossible odds. "The Oathbound didn't just heal individuals," he said slowly. "According to the memories in the crystal, they could share their power with others. Create networks of enhanced beings who could work together to accomplish impossible things. You're talking about permanently altering 30 people without their consent," Morrison said. "I'm talking about giving them the tools they need to survive what's coming." Marcus opened his eyes and looked at the assembled group. "The choice has to be theirs, but they need to understand what we're facing." The next hour was chaos as Marcus explained the situation to the station's crew. The reaction was mixed. Some were terrified at the prospect of biological alteration. Others were fascinated by the possibilities. But when the long-range sensors detected the first signs of the Devourer's feeding process, beginning on the system's outer planets, the debate ended quickly. 28 humans and 2 Zephyrians volunteered for the enhancement. The process was unlike anything Marcus had imagined. As he shared fragments of the crystal's power with each volunteer, he felt their minds joining his in a network of shared consciousness. Not a hive mind, but something more like a jazz ensemble where each player maintained their individuality while contributing to a greater harmony. The enhanced crew worked with unprecedented coordination. Engineers and scientists collaborated on modifications to the station systems that should have taken weeks but were completed in hours. Weapons specialists developed new targeting algorithms that could track the Devourer's energy patterns. Medical personnel prepared treatments for injuries that hadn't been invented yet. But most importantly, they began to understand what they were truly fighting. The Devourers weren't just alien predators, they were the antithesis of everything the Healer Prime represented. Where the Oathbound created and preserved life, the Devourers consumed and corrupted it. They were entropy given form, the heat death of the universe made manifest. As the enemy ships entered the inner system, Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The original alliance had failed to stop these creatures. The question was whether humanity and their new Zephyrian allies could succeed where their predecessors had fallen. "All stations report ready," Morrison announced, her voice carrying new harmonics that spoke of the crystalline enhancement running through her nervous system. Marcus nodded, feeling the network of consciousness surrounding him like a warm embrace. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The second piece had begun not with treaties or negotiations, but with shared purpose in the face of annihilation. "Let's show them what we've learned from the past 1,000 years," he said. And throughout the station, 30 enhanced beings prepared to rewrite the rules of war. The first Devourer ship reached the station's perimeter like a malignant cancer, spreading through space. Up close, its organic nature was even more disturbing. The hull rippled with what looked like muscular contractions, and sensor arrays that resembled compound eyes tracked their movements with predatory intelligence. Marcus stood in the station's command center. His consciousness expanded across the crystalline network that now connected every enhanced being on the station. Through their shared awareness, he could perceive the approaching threat with unprecedented clarity. The Devourer wasn't just a ship, it was a living ecosystem dedicated to consuming and converting biological matter into more of itself. "Energy drain detected," reported Lieutenant Harris from the engineering station. Her voice carried new harmonics, the crystalline enhancement allowing her to interface directly with the station's systems. "It's trying to siphon power from our reactors." Life force extraction in progress, added Dr. Yamamoto from medical. I'm reading cellular degradation in the outer hull sections. The metal itself is beginning to decay. This was how the Devourers operated. They didn't destroy their targets through conventional weapons. They consumed them slowly, converting matter and energy into biological resources while leaving behind only empty husks. But the enhanced crew was ready for this. Marcus felt their collective will focus like a laser. And suddenly the station's defensive systems came online with capabilities that shouldn't have existed. Harris had somehow integrated crystalline matrices into the power grid, creating resonance fields that disrupted the Devourer's feeding process. Impossible, Vashti whispered from its position at the tactical console. They've never encountered resistance to their consumption process. The Devourer's response was immediate and violent. Organic projectiles launched from ports along its hull, each one a living organism designed to burrow through conventional armor and begin converting a ship from the inside out. But the station's point defense systems had been enhanced beyond recognition. Beams of crystalline energy, tuned to disrupt biological processes, intercepted the projectiles and reduced them to inert organic matter. It's working, Morrison said, her enhanced tactical awareness tracking dozens of variables simultaneously, but we're only facing one ship. Long-range sensors show 7 more approaching. Marcus felt the network's attention turn toward the larger threat. Through the shared consciousness, he could sense the fear that threatened to overwhelm their coordination. The original alliance had fielded thousands of ships against the Devourers and still been defeated. How could 30 enhanced beings hope to succeed where entire civilizations had failed? The answer came from an unexpected source. Morden, its consciousness now partially integrated into the network, shared a memory from its ancestral files, images of the final battle against the Devourers, recorded by Zephyrian survivors who had escaped the massacre. Look at how they died, Morden projected through the network. The Alliance ships fought as separate units. Each one tried to protect itself while attacking the enemy. They never truly coordinated their efforts. Marcus understood immediately. The Devourers had evolved to fight discrete targets, overwhelming them through superior numbers and the gradual erosion of their life force. But the crystalline network created something they had never encountered, a truly unified organism spread across multiple platforms. We don't fight them ship by ship, Marcus said aloud. We fight them as a single entity. The transformation that followed defied every principle of conventional warfare. The human and Zephyrian vessels in the system began moving in perfect synchronization. Their crews' actions coordinated through the crystalline network. Instead of independent ships, they became organs of a larger organism dedicated to preserving life rather than consuming it. When the remaining Devourer ships arrived, they faced something unprecedented in their millions of years of existence. The human Zephyrian fleet moved like a school of fish, each vessel's actions supporting the others in ways that created emergent capabilities far beyond the sum of their parts. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The Devourer's consumption beams, designed to drain energy from single targets, found themselves dissipated across the entire network. When one ship took damage, the others immediately compensated, sharing power and life force to maintain the collective's integrity. But the most significant development came when Marcus realized that the network could do more than just coordinate defensive actions. The crystalline enhancement didn't just allow them to share information and coordinate movements. It allowed them to share the fundamental force that made them alive. We're not just connected, Marcus announced through the network. We're sharing life force itself. And if we can share it among ourselves, the implication hit every enhanced consciousness simultaneously. If they could distribute life energy throughout their network, they could potentially reverse the Devourer's consumption process. Dr. Yamamoto was the first to test the theory. Using her enhanced medical knowledge, she projected healing energy toward a section of the station's hull that was being consumed by one of the Devourer organisms. Instead of merely stopping the decay, the crystalline energy began converting the Devourer's biomatter back into normal metal and polymers. It's working, she reported. The consumption process is reversing. I'm actually healing the Devourer organism, forcing it back into a non-parasitic state. The discovery changed everything. The network's focus shifted from defense to active healing, treating the Devourer ships not as enemies to be destroyed, but as corrupted organisms to be cured. Marcus felt the collective consciousness expand as they began to understand what they were truly fighting. The Devourers weren't naturally occurring predators. They were the remains of another species, one that had been consumed and corrupted so thoroughly that they had forgotten their original nature. The biological imperative to consume wasn't their true nature. It was a disease that had infected them eons ago. They were like us once, Vashti projected through the network, its ancient memories providing context for what they were seeing. The original Devourers were a peaceful species called the Nurturers. They were gardeners who helped life flourish throughout their region of space. The corruption had come from something else, something that existed in the spaces between dimensions, a force of pure entropy that had used the Nurturers' connection to life as a pathway to manifest in normal space. Over millions of years, it had twisted them into the very opposite of what they had once been. But now, for the first time, they faced beings who could offer healing instead of resistance. Marcus felt the network's collective will focus into a beam of pure life force. Instead of attacking the nearest Devourer ship, they projected healing energy toward it. The effect was immediate and profound. The organic hull began to shift and change, its cancerous growth smoothing into healthier patterns. The predatory consciousness that drove the ship flickered and wavered as memories of its original nature began to surface. The Devourer ship stopped its attack, its weapons retracting as confusion flooded its biological systems. For the first time in millions of years, one of their kind remembered what it felt like to nurture rather than consume. But the healing process was exhausting. Marcus felt the network's energy reserves dropping rapidly as they maintained the projection. 30 enhanced beings, no matter how perfectly coordinated, couldn't hope to heal 8 massive Devourer ships simultaneously. "We need more," Marcus said, his consciousness reaching out beyond the immediate battle. "More volunteers, more ships, more beings willing to join the network." "The war fleets," Morrison projected. "Both human and Zephyrian forces are converging on this system. They'll arrive within hours, expecting to find wreckage." "Then we show them something better," Marcus replied. "We show them what the second piece actually looks like." As if responding to his words, the partially healed Devourer ship sent a transmission. The voice that emerged was weak and confused, like someone waking from a nightmare that had lasted millennia. "What? What have you done to us? We remember. We remember gardens. We remember helping things grow. How long have we been lost?" The network shared Marcus's response, each voice speaking in perfect unison. "Too long. But you're not lost anymore. Help us heal the others, and help us remember together what it means to nurture life instead of consuming it." For the first time in galactic history, a Devourer ship turned its weapons against its own kind, not to destroy, but to hold them steady while healing energy washed over their corrupted hulls. The second piece had begun not with the signing of treaties, but with the healing of an ancient wound that had festered for millions of years. The arrival of the combined human and Zephyrian fleets should have been a moment of triumph, but instead it became the greatest test of the nascent second piece. Admiral Sarah Mitchell's flagship, the UES Valiant, dropped out of hyperspace to find a scene that defied every principle of warfare she had ever learned. 3 Devourer ships hung in space alongside the research station, their hulls shimmering with the same crystalline patterns that had appeared on Marcus's hands. The remaining 5 Devourers floated nearby, held in stasis fields projected by their converted kin, while streams of healing energy played across their corrupted surfaces. "What in the hell is going on here?" Mitchell's voice crackled across the communication channels as her fleet assumed attack formations. Marcus, still connected to the network but speaking with his own voice, responded, "Admiral, we're conducting the largest medical operation in galactic history. We're healing the Devourers, restoring them to their original nature." "Healing them? Dr. Chen, those things have destroyed entire civilizations. They're not patients, they're weapons of mass extinction." "They're victims," Marcus corrected. "Victims of a corruption that we can now cure." "Admiral, I'm going to share something with you that will be difficult to accept, but I need you to see it through my eyes." Before Mitchell could object, Marcus projected a condensed version of what the network had learned through the crystalline connection. The images flooded her consciousness. The original nurturers tending to vast gardens that spanned star systems. The arrival of the entropy force from beyond normal space. The slow corruption that had transformed gardeners into Devourers over the course of millions of years. Mitchell's response was immediate and violent. Get out of my head! What have you done to yourself, Chen? What has that alien technology done to you? It's shown me the truth, Marcus replied calmly. And it's given me the tools to fix a mistake that's been festering since before our species existed. Admiral, I'm offering you the same choice I offered everyone else on this station. Join the network voluntarily and help us heal the galaxy, or remain separate and watch us do it without you. The standoff that followed tested every principle of the crystalline network. Marcus could feel the tension radiating from both fleets as weapons locked onto targets and fingers hovered over firing studs. Humanity's natural xenophobia warred with the Zephyrians' predatory instincts, while the newly awakened nurturer struggled to understand the concept of interspecies conflict. It was Vashitai who broke the deadlock. The ancient Zephyrian spoke directly to the Zephyrian fleet commander, its words carrying the weight of centuries of accumulated wisdom. War leader Kethran, you know me. You know my reputation and my commitment to our people's survival. What I tell you now, I tell you as one who has lived through the rise and fall of empires. I hear you, Elder Healer. The path we have followed since the burning has led us only to more burning. We have become so focused on survival that we have forgotten what we are trying to survive for. These humans offer us something we lost long ago, the chance to build instead of merely endure. Marcus felt the network's attention focus on the Zephyrian war leader as Kethran considered Vashtai's words. The alien commander was a veteran of dozens of campaigns, a being who had dedicated its life to protecting its species through superior firepower and tactical brilliance. But now it faced a choice that no amount of military training could prepare it for. The humans have surprised us before, Kethran said finally. Their capacity for both cruelty and compassion exceeds our models. If they say they can heal the devourers, perhaps it is worth the risk to see if they speak truth. One by one, Zephyrian warriors began volunteering for the enhancement process. The decision wasn't easy for them. Their entire culture was built around individual strength and the dominance of the fittest. But the network offered something different. Strength through unity, power through shared purpose. Admiral Mitchell's response was more complicated. Human military doctrine emphasized chain of command and following orders, but what Marcus was offering challenged every assumption about warfare and interspecies relations. Worse, it required a level of trust that went against every survival instinct humanity had developed during the war. You're asking me to voluntarily alter the consciousness of my crew, Mitchell said, to merge their minds with alien technology that we don't understand. That's not medical treatment, that's assimilation. It's evolution, Marcus replied. The same kind of evolution that allowed our ancestors to develop language, to form communities, to reach for the stars. Admiral, look at what we've accomplished in just a few hours. 3 devourer ships restored to their original nature, a network of consciousness that spans multiple species, and the foundation for a peace that could last millennia. As if to emphasize his point, one of the newly restored nurturer ships transmitted a burst of data to the human fleet. The information it contained revolutionized their understanding of biology, offering insights into healing techniques that could eliminate most known diseases and extend human lifespan by centuries. They're sharing knowledge freely, Dr. Yamamoto added through the network. No trade agreements, no political conditions, just the simple desire to help others grow and flourish. The transmission had an effect that Marcus hadn't anticipated. Throughout the human fleet, medical officers and scientists began requesting voluntary enhancement, not for the military advantages it offered, but for the opportunity to learn from beings who had spent millions of years perfecting the arts of healing and nurturing life. Within 6 hours, over 200 humans and Zephyrians had joined the network. The enhancement process had evolved as well, becoming gentler and more reversible as they learned from each new volunteer. Instead of the dramatic transformation Marcus had undergone, new network members retained their individual consciousness while gaining access to the collective knowledge and shared purpose. But the real test came when they turned their attention to the 5th devourer ship. This one had been corrupted longer than the others, its original nurturer consciousness buried so deeply that even the combined healing efforts of the network couldn't reach it. The entropy force that had originally corrupted the species still maintained a foothold in this vessel, fighting back against every attempt to restore its true nature. "We need more power," Marcus announced through the network. More minds, more life force, more beings willing to stand together against the darkness. Admiral Mitchell's response surprised everyone, including herself. The entire Third Fleet volunteers for enhancement. All ships, all crew members. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. The mass enhancement that followed created something unprecedented in galactic history. Nearly 3,000 beings linked together in a network of shared consciousness. Their combined will focused on healing a corruption that had existed since the dawn of civilization. The battle for the fifth Devourer's soul lasted 3 days. It wasn't fought with weapons or tactics, but with pure determination to preserve life in the face of entropy. When the corruption finally broke and the ship's original nature reasserted itself, the psychic shockwave could be felt across multiple star systems. But more importantly, the victory proved that the network could scale beyond anything its creators had imagined. 3,000 minds working in perfect harmony, sharing knowledge and strength across the barriers of species and culture. The second piece was no longer just a possibility. It had become inevitable. 5 years after the Battle of Vega Station, Marcus Chen stood in the Harmony Gardens of New Kalamesh, watching children from a dozen different species play together among crystalline trees that sang in harmonious frequencies. The world had been the first joint colony of the second piece, built on the ruins of an ancient nurturer garden world and designed to honor both the past and the future. Transformation of galactic civilization had been more rapid and comprehensive than anyone had dared imagine. The crystalline network had grown to encompass millions of beings across hundreds of worlds, each one choosing to join the collective consciousness that preserved individual identity while sharing knowledge and purpose. The Devourers, now calling themselves the Restored, Nurturers had become the galaxy's most dedicated terraformers, using their biological manipulation abilities to heal worlds damaged by millennia of warfare. Their ships, once harbingers of destruction, now carried seeds and genetic templates to barren systems, transforming dead rocks into thriving ecosystems. The integration protocols are working better than we projected, Dr. Yamamoto reported through the network. She now served as the head of the Collective Medical Council, coordinating healing efforts across 16 sectors. The Veltar delegates have agreed to share their navigation techniques, and the Morgeth energy specialists are developing new crystalline enhancement matrices. Marcus nodded, though his attention was focused on something more immediate. Through the network, he could sense the approach of a familiar consciousness, one that had been missing for months. Elder healer Vashti materialized in the garden through a personal transport platform, its ancient form moving with surprising grace among the singing trees. The Zephyrian had been leading an expedition to the galactic rim, searching for other survivors of the original Alliance species. Healer Prime, Vashti greeted him formally, though Marcus could feel the warmth of old friendship through their connection. I bring news that will change everything we thought we knew about our situation. Marcus felt the attention of the entire network focus on them as Vashti shared its discoveries. Images flooded through the collective consciousness, vast ruins and systems beyond the galactic edge, technological artifacts that predated known civilization, and most shocking of all, evidence of other galaxy-spanning networks similar to their own. The Alliance wasn't the first attempt at galactic unity, Vashti explained. We found traces of at least 6 previous civilizations that achieved something similar to what we've built. Each one lasted longer than the last, and each one left behind knowledge that the next could build upon. What happened to them? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. They transcended, Vashti replied. When a civilization reaches a certain level of collective consciousness and technological capability, it faces a choice. Remain bound to normal spacetime or evolve into something that exists on a higher dimensional plane. The implications sent ripples of excitement and fear through the network. They had always known that their current path was unprecedented, but the idea that they were following a pattern set by countless previous civilizations raised questions about their ultimate destiny. Are we heading toward the same transcendence? Admiral Mitchell asked through the network. She now served as the Military Coordination Council's chief strategist, though her role had evolved far beyond traditional warfare. Unknown, Vashti admitted, but we've found something else. Messages left behind by the previous civilizations. Warnings about the entropy force that corrupted the Nurturers. The network's mood shifted as Vashti shared the warnings. The corruption they had fought at Vega Station was just one manifestation of something far larger and more dangerous. The entropy force existed in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the collapse of organized systems and growing stronger with each civilization it destroyed. It's not just a random force of destruction, Marcus realized as he processed the information. It's actively working to prevent the evolution of consciousness. Every time a species develops enough collective awareness to threaten its existence, it intervenes. Which means, Morden added from its position on the Zephyrian homeworld, that our success has made us a target. The larger our network grows, the more attention we'll attract from this force. But instead of fear, Marcus felt a sense of completion spreading through the network. This was why the crystal had chosen him, why the ancient Oathbound had preserved their knowledge through millennia of darkness. They weren't just building a new civilization, they were preparing for a war that had been fought in cycles for millions of years. Then we do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds, Marcus said, his consciousness reaching out to touch every mind in the network. We adapt, we innovate, and we find a way to win. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across hundreds of worlds, millions of beings added their voices to a collective declaration of purpose. They would not simply transcend when the time came. They would stay and fight, using their evolved consciousness to break the cycle that had trapped the galaxy in endless repetition. The children playing in the Harmony Gardens paused in their games, sensing the shift in the network's attention. They were the first generation to grow up in the second piece, beings who would never know the fear and isolation that had defined their parents' lives. Their potential was unlimited, their future unbound by the conflicts of the past. Marcus knelt among them, his enhanced senses perceiving not just their current forms, but the incredible beings they would become. Some would be healers like him, others would be explorers who pushed the boundaries of known space. A few might even become something entirely new, entities that could exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions. "What are you playing?" he asked a young human girl whose crystalline enhancements sparkled like stars beneath her skin. "We're building a garden that grows in all the spaces between worlds," she replied matter-of-factly. "Grandmother Vashitai showed us how the old ones used to do it, before they got scared and ran away to higher places." Marcus smiled, feeling the future unfold before him like a flower blooming in fast motion. The second piece wasn't just about ending the current wars. It was about fundamentally changing what it meant to be alive in this galaxy. They would heal the wounds left by millions of years of conflict, restore the balance between order and entropy, and create something beautiful enough to last forever. The crystalline network pulsed with shared determination as billions of beings across the galaxy turned their attention to the work ahead. There would be challenges, setbacks, and battles against forces that existed beyond normal comprehension. But for the first time in galactic history, they would face those challenges together. In the distance, a nurturer ship was seeding a new star system with the basic elements needed for life. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian warriors to build cities that existed in perfect harmony with their environments. Children who had never known war played games that would someday reshape the fundamental laws of physics. Marcus Chen, the war medic who had once knelt beside a dying alien warrior, stood at the center of it all. The last dose of medicine had become the first gift of healing, and from that simple act of compassion, an entire galaxy was being reborn. The second piece stretched out before them like an infinite garden, waiting to be tended by beings who had finally remembered what it meant to nurture life, instead of merely surviving it. And at the heart of it all, the light of remembrance pulsed with the steady rhythm of hope made manifest, ensuring that this time, the peace would endure.